Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the next webinar in the Built Environment Networking webinar series. Today's webinar is titled Keeping Up with Demand and Doing More for Less. My name is Phil Laycock. I'm one of your hosts for today. This is actually webinar number 203 since we started in April, if anybody's been counting, but it's been a busy few months for us. So keeping up with demand, doing more with less. Businesses operating within the built environment have never faced a more challenging period when it comes to delivering projects profitably. Industry pressures on profit margins and productivity have now been amplified to a point where all of us are working harder for less. This is a theme which is consistent through any recession, and at some point, those who thrive learn to adapt and deliver more output with less resource. So this webinar will provide some actionable insights when addressing productivity drains around correspondence management, which has impacted the industry for years and is now becoming increasingly important. So today's webinar is brought to you by Mail Manager. Jacob Wardrop is a commercial manager at Mail Manager, which is the email management and solution which is developed by Arup. Jacob has over 10 years experience in the construction industry, helping some of the nation's leading contractors solve challenges associated with risk, productivity and information management. He's joined today by Nida Alazme, who is the BIM manager at John Sisk & Son. Nida holds a master's degree in BIM and integrated design from the University of Salford and currently works as a BIM manager at John Sisk & Son and leading their BIM implementation at the UK North Business Unit. So without further ado, I'm delighted to be able to hand over to Jacob, and I'll leave you in his capable hands. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Phil, and thank you everyone for taking time out of your morning to understand a little bit more about what we're talking about today. If I press share my screen, you should be able to see that okay. Phil, please jump in if any of this isn't obvious. But in terms of what we're going to cover today, Phil's absolutely right. Learning to kind of survive and thrive in what is a difficult trading environment is the theme for today. Really delighted to be joined by Nida from John Sisk & Sons, who's going to be really giving, I suppose, for some people who already know about the topic, a kind of a bit of an in-depth practical look at lean construction and what it means and how it's been successfully applied within John Sisk & Sons, and importantly how this has led to being able to deliver projects more profitably. I think topics and subjects like lean do get talked about quite a lot, a little bit like digital twins, but they're talked about in quite big and broad terms, which make it quite difficult when trying to understand what they actually are and how you can apply this concept to your business. So we're going to have a practical look at lean construction, what it means and how it's been applied on a project, as well as what outcomes as it kind of actually delivered. I'm going to talk about how this applies to what we do. So Mail Manager are an email management Outlook add-in, which has been created by Arup to help companies get control of their email. And one of the big things for Arup, which I'll talk about later, is, I suppose, recognizing the role email plays in the productivity of their staff, as well as their ability to handle disputes, which obviously are massively time-consuming and very laborious to actually address. So we're going to talk about kind of Arup's information management take on this and how it applies to lean. But to kick things off, Nida, welcome. I'll pass over to you.
Thanks very much, Jacob, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending today's webinar. I'm just going to share my screen with you so you can see my slides and we can start going through the lean implementation journey. All right, okay. So today's presentation, I'm just going to take you through the digital transformation and how we did transform the business at John Sisk & Son into the digital world, and that's obviously incorporated with different practices and methods that I've used inspired by lean construction techniques. So I'm going to take you through that journey, and I'm going to explain in depth what lean techniques I've used, and you can apply this to any kind of business or any kind of process, not just exactly as I've done in this project. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Nida Al-Azmi, and I'm a BIM manager for UK North at John Sisk and Son. I do hold a master's degree in BIM and integrated design from the University of Salford. I've worked for the University of Salford as a knowledge exchange partnership. I've also worked for Beijing Construction and Engineering, and I now work for Jean Sisk and Son. I'm also a certified Lean practitioner by Lean Construction International and Cardiff University level 1A, 1C. So, today's agenda, I'm going to take you through a quick introduction to Sisk business and what we do in terms of the digital project delivery in our business. And then I'm just going to show you a bit of case study. The case study that I'm going to show is taken basically from one of the major projects in Manchester, which is called Circus Square. That's still a live project that we still kind of building in Manchester city centre. And then I'm going to show you exactly the lean techniques and lean methods that I've used in this case, and then what the results are, and then the continuous improvement method, which is basically driven from lean techniques. So first of all, I'm just going to take you for a quick introduction to our business. So Jean Sisk and Son we are a construction business. We are a main contractor, which was established in Ireland in 1859. We do have an impressive portfolio of work, including schools, hotels, data centers, residential schemes, commercial schemes, basically all sorts of different projects. And then we have established the UK branch in 1984. We also operate in Europe in different countries like Sweden, Germany, and other countries in Europe. Sisk is a family business, and we do have like family values still in our business. Until now, we also have like few members of Sisk family still working for us in the business now. The turnover is about like 1 billion a year, and then we are number one contractor in Ireland. We do employ about 2,000 people in the UK and Ireland, and the average size of our projects is around £90 million. So that's us, that's the business. Now, in terms of the digital project delivery and our kind of views on that, we are pretty much as all other contractors in the country, inspired by the UK government strategy. We are trying to drive waste out of our process. We are trying to increase our productivity. We are also aiming for faster delivery, for more productivity. That's what every business basically is trying to achieve, and that's why we kind of I kind of mainly put my eyes on lean methods and lean techniques to improve that delivery. And I think digital technology, that's the perfect use of digital technology to help, again, driving waste out of our process, driving more efficiencies and more productivity in the project delivery process. So talking about lean construction, just a quick start and trying to kind of define lean construction. Lean construction is basically driven from lean manufacturing methods. That's the Japanese method that started with Toyota car manufacturer. It's been later developed into like tools and methods and techniques that could be used in the construction projects. Again, the aim is again to add value, quality, and add more efficiency, also to standardize and drive continuous improvement into the process. So the main focus of lean techniques is always to reduce waste and reduce lead time. So that's basically what lean construction is all about. So these different concepts and ideas of lean, it does fit. They do fit perfectly with within our BIM and digital strategy in the business. So we always target efficiency and quality and more certainty in our project delivery. So when starting implementing lean thinking or lean techniques into live projects, I had first of all to come up with like clear methodology. How am I going to use these different techniques and different methods? So I've like kind of put this method in place. So I started documenting all my activities, basically all digital activities happening on this live project, Circuit Square project, and then started doing like kind of review and analysis using lean techniques, then identifying issues, areas where we can improve and drive more productivity and efficiency. And then I started also understanding the root causes behind these issues, why these issues happened, what was wrong in the first place, and then propose a permanent solution. Again, that's one of the main lean methods, is always to kind of propose like a solution that can permanently drive the issue or tackle the issue in every future case. And then again, implement all these solutions and use plan, do, check, act method for continuous improvement. So that was basically my methodology. I'm going to move on now and start the practical implementation. So first of all, again, started reviewing all digital activities and all kind of actions that I had going on this project using lean techniques. So putting the triggers for improvements. So each activity, and then what was the trigger for improving this activity. So I've put some lean methods and lean techniques. You can see that on the bottom right side of my screen. So I've used different techniques like value stream mapping, 5Y technique, standard operation process. Basically, these are famous lean construction techniques that you can use in any project or in any process. So that was my first step, putting everything together, understand issues, understand triggers, and then put the right technique for each issue or each trigger. Moving on, that's showing how I kind of tackle the root causes of each of these issues. So that's showing the use of these techniques. So that's, for example, the value stream mapping technique. So I've kind of analyzed the different production processes, different information management processes in happening in this project. Again, that's detailed analysis that can provide you with full understanding of what is the root cause of this issue, not just what you can see on the surface. Again, that's another concept when doing lean construction, is you always need to tackle the root cause of the issue, not what you can see on the surface. Problem-solving strategy, that was again one of the adopted strategies to kind of solve the issues. So the strategy that I've adopted, it's called 5C technique: concern, contain, cause, correct, and close out. Again, you can, if you want to read more about these, you can just go online, search for lean 5C technique, problem solving technique, and you can fully understand how you can implement this in live projects. Again, I had to take like immediate action and kind of tackle the issues, making sure that it's not going to spread further, and then I had to correct that permanently, and finally review and close out the issue and make sure that's not going to happen in any future project. So that was one of the techniques that is very helpful in terms of solving any issues or any problems, and preventing that going further down the line. So that's just more like in-depth overview, showing how that all worked together in a live project. So again, that's a kind of full process, starting from defining issues and the triggers to the final target of close out these issues permanently. So that implementation of all that process in a live project, it was, to be fair, it wasn't like possible without engagement from project teams, different project teams working on this project, and also especially the senior management team, because you need always to drive any changes or any implementations top down, because that's how it works. So that wasn't possible without full engagement from different teams across this project. Again, that was kind of the practical implementation on Circus Square project in Manchester. So finally, after closing out all these issues and make sure that that's going to prevent these issues happening in the future, I moved on into the next thing, which is documenting my results and looking for further improvement. Again, that's also one of the very important points when doing lean construction, is you've always got to keep like your eye on things and make sure that you always kind of review and analyze what's going on, and make sure that there's always pocket for improvement and further increase in your productivity, in your efficiency, in driving your waste out of the process. So that's always kind of recommended technique after using all the previous techniques. So you have always to keep the continuous improvement going on. So that's part of the lean implementation, which I've kind of done recently. Always try to analyze and try to further improve your process. Now, moving on into the recent changes, I think everything that we've been doing over the last couple of years just suddenly kind of started to change again. And I think what I've done previously is probably not very much applicable now. So what I'm thinking now is more like trying to adopt the same techniques, same methods, and make sure that I can analyze and review our recent communication methods, which now which are different because of COVID-19 and the restrictions and all the issues with the pandemic. So that's probably now something that I need to kind of review and go through again, and make sure that we need to make sure that there's all these new methods and new ways of working, and not like adding waste, or not really adding kind of lead time into the work that we are doing. I think that's it for me for today. I'd like to hear from you if you have any questions or any kind of comments, and I'll hand back to Jacob. Jacob?
Hi. Yes, apologies for the delay there. Not too sure, but thank you very much for that, Nida. I think obviously really helpful to hopefully give people a bit of insight into how to kind of move away from a kind of firefighting mode to a process of continuous improvement. And there's a strong concept of kind of marginal gains in what you're talking about there as well. So yeah, but thank you very much for that. I'm just going to share my screen again, so everybody should see that now. So so in terms of, I suppose, really kind of how does any of this apply to information management? I think a lot of what we and businesses talk about when discussing things like lean construction, the digital twin concept, BIM in practice, it's tempting to think of kind of think of one system as being able to solve all of your problems and make your business as lean and as kind of efficient as possible. But what we know is that it's actually a process of improving every single area of your company, and there's no one system which kind of comes in and sort of solves every problem which you have. So what I'm going to talk about is kind of how we've adopted some of these principles to how we manage our information, particularly in terms of making it easy for our staff to check and act on projects, as well as actually review what's happened, which is particularly helpful when it comes to dealing with risk and disputes. So in terms of, I suppose, how, and maybe some of you on the have joined the webinar today will be able to relate to this, how most businesses are set up from an IT technology point of view is a kind of a series of disparate systems across the business. So typically most of you will probably be using Office 365, I would imagine, for hosted email, SharePoint, Teams, and all that sort of thing. Images are probably captured maybe through an app, if not just kind of from guys' phones and then filed somewhere. Most businesses still use Windows, Explorer for managing their internal documents, and there's kind of a standard filing structure which everybody goes to file and share and save key documents. Lots of businesses are also starting to use a common data environment or file sharing collaboration platform to share documents. So things like Procore, Viewpoint are very popular in the UK. SharePoint's also kind of increasingly used, particularly for internal collaboration. And what really all of this means is that if you think about everywhere a project is referenced, it's probably in 9-10 different systems. And if you think about if there's a problem with a project, where do we go to check and act on it? There's probably 9 or 10 different places where we might go to check and act on it. So I'm going to talk about the kind of the information management part of this, and I suppose what our view is really. So earlier this year, we released a report, which was a survey having kind of gathered results from over 1,000, around 1,000, just under 1,000 leaders in the construction industry on the state of project management, and really trying to understand what type of communication channels are people using and relying on, what happens when projects go wrong, how much time is spent in there, and when trying to identify jobs which are delivered profitably, what do they have in common, and what can we learn from them? And technology definitely plays pivotal part in that. So what came out of that research was a big reliance on email. So over kind of 80% of project correspondence was via email. About 9 in 10 companies were concerned about project information being readily available, which I think is how a lot of us feel like we're constantly in firefighting mode, particularly if you have a kind of difficult client or somebody leaves the business or there's a problem on a project. It's really easy to get into that into that mindset. When you know, in doing that, you're obviously not becoming any leaner. You're just getting pretty stressed out. And then 99%. I don't quite know how it was 100. I'm guessing there's one person there who hasn't had to, but 99% of businesses have had to retrieve emails from past projects before. And for us at Arup, that was definitely a concern. The amount of time and disruption caused when a project went wrong was really challenging, and kind of delivering projects and assuming they were all going to go okay and according to plan was just a kind of recipe for disaster, really. So what we've tried to do is put in some proactive dispute resolution techniques and solutions, which mean that doesn't happen, which allows us to focus on improving our actual operation. So in terms of I suppose a project nightmare, I don't know if anyone here will be able to relate to kind of any of this kind of thing, or if you've ever had I suppose what we'd kind of term an email nightmare. But probably one thing which everyone has in common is there's stuff in their inbox now which is commercially sensitive, which you probably don't want everyone to see, but if you ever need to go back and find it, it's probably going to be really important in terms of covering your tracks and evidencing what you've done. Why this is more relevant now than it was a year ago, and why, I mean, we probably used to have about 10 to 15 clients partner with us and implement our solution. A month now it's probably around 25 to 30, because the volume of our correspondence has increased exponentially, but actually the amount of time people spend over email has as well, because there's less time for other stuff. Let's face it. But the importance of being able to manage and file your correspondence is kind of even more important when you need visibility, because you don't have that because you're not in one place. So from our point of view, email, certainly most used communication tool, really important. People normally wouldn't realize how important it was and how important it is until they're kind of going back to go find something, which is when it's too late, which is then when we get into that kind of firefighting mode. But particularly at the moment, we see this as probably one of the biggest productivity kind of drains in the industry. And if you look at where do you spend most of your time, I think email is probably fairly up there. So in terms of, I suppose, how to integrate email into your overall information management strategy, I think the reason why we've got this slide here is because I mentioned earlier that email is the most used communication tool on a project, but it's the one thing which everybody does differently. So everyone has their own kind of silo of information, and really what we need to do is try and adopt some of the BIM principles around sharing and collaborating towards email. Just really making sure that whether it's a document, a drawing, an email, a model, a photo, it's filed, it's captured, and you're always able to find it. It's never locked in someone's inbox or or in someone's head. So in terms of kind of integrating email into, I suppose, what you do and having it as kind of business as usual, it's really important to integrate it with your quality management procedures. So if any of you are ISO 9001, it should absolutely, whether you use something like Mail Manager or not, it should absolutely kind of be in there. In terms of if you are using things like SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, Procore, they're all solutions which help your business become more efficient, but kind of we would, well, for our point of view, and for about 1,000 other construction leaders, email was kind of almost like a neglected pot of information. So definitely consider bringing that in, so you've got projects, documents, drawings, and emails in one place. The kind of things which this really helps with is getting site teams connected with your back office better, mitigating risk, which I've already talked about, making it easier when people leave a bit, when people do unfortunately leave a business or are off, because that is pretty stressful in terms of kind of what they said, where's their information, and what am I going to be asked importantly. And from a time-saving point of view, admin teams, overhead departments, we are seeing cutbacks there, and fee earners are having to do more. They're having to do probably more administration, more chasing than they needed to do. So it's really important to try and identify the areas where they can and where there is an opportunity to get leaner, so your business is able to operate without having large document control teams and large administration teams, because the ratio of admin support to fee earners is kind of getting worse from a I suppose from a kind of a fee earner's point of view. So in terms of the different ways of managing email, which is like the topic really for today, I'm sure some of you here will have, kind of one person in your business who's your kind of filer, your OCD, your kind of exemplar person for filing correspondence, and you've probably got people, dare I say it, towards the top of a business who are less likely to be quite as diligent when it comes to that. So this slide here just talks through four different ways to manage email. You could have one person with an absolutely overloaded inbox, and doesn't really see the value in kind of sharing, filing anything. One person who doesn't want to share anything, likes to have their kind of black book of contacts. I've definitely worked with lots of estimators, in that position. And then the one on the bottom right, which is your kind of filer OCD. So what we see here is a massive inconsistency when it comes to managing the most used form of communication on a project. In terms of mail managers' story, Arup basically around 10 years ago identified that email was a massive problem in their business. There was no real control in terms of how it was managed and how people organised things. There was two audiences really concerned about this. Fee earners recognised that a noticeable percentage of their day was spent on email, and directors recognised that it was impacting their ability to deliver projects effectively because of the level of risk they were carrying. So what I mean by that is, if we were going back to an old project to retrieve all of the emails and see what promises have been made and what's kind of been discussed, it's quite difficult to do that if you've only got half a story. Really. So from our point of view, we thought, imagine if project teams could just find anything on any project without wasting time filing, whether that, and we kind of already had this concept for documents and drawings, but not really for emails. So we actually went out to market to try and find a solution to address this issue for us. We couldn't find something, so we decided to create our own, which Arup have done in a number of other areas of their business. But then, as more and more people saw Mail Manager and site meetings, and lots of people, obviously people leave Arup and then wanted to take Mail Manager with them, which is pretty unusual. I'm sure you've got colleagues, you think if they left, kind of how many pieces of software would they take with them? I bet it's quite a small list. But Mail Manager was on that list, so we then decided to create Mail Manager, which is what I'm going to run through now. So, if in terms of, I suppose, how Mail Manager works, this is in my inbox now. So I've got these two buttons here, file and search, and I'm just going to talk about how Mail Manager helps you file and find the things you need to do your job better, really. So to start off with, in terms of being able to search correspondence, we've got an area here which is basically acts as a Google to go and search through for all of my information. So I'm sure most people who we speak to normally can only find their own emails. They're only able to search what's in their inbox, which we didn't think made a lot of sense because everybody works on projects and needs to share information. So what I've got here is an ability to go and search through 170,000 emails across the business, which is all of the emails I've got permission and I've got an interest in seeing. I haven't been included in all of those emails, but I'm able to go and search for them. So if I'm working on a project with one of our clients who's using Mail Manager called Gensler, then I can click here and go and see all of the emails associated with that project. For example, I'm not included in all of them, but I can see that here. Now, equally, if I wanted to go and see all of the correspondence with a particular supplier, for example, you may have an issue with a subcontractor or a subconsultant, and you just want to see, well, what's happening with that subconsultant across all projects. I can type in Greytech, who's one of our partners, and I can see here immediately what's happening with Greytech, various different conversations which are going on. I know there's an issue with an invoice, so if I type in invoice, I can immediately go and see, well, there's this latest issue where they're chasing us effectively for an invoice. So a really kind of, I suppose, a practical example of how finding stuff means that you don't then have to go and chase someone and even worse, you don't have to try and sort of guess or kind of fly blind. A couple of other things which definitely help is also when people have left a business. So we had somebody leave the business called George Kedgley, and if I just type in George's name, I can immediately go and see all of the correspondence George has had, and I can then group all of this by project as well. So I can see here the different emails and conversations which George had by project. So he was in our sales team, so a lot of his correspondence is on relating to sales and marketing, just there. So if I one kind of final point really, when it comes to searching, you would use something like this for if you're searching for, if you've got a client on the phone and you want to see, well, what's all of the emails I've exchanged with that particular client, if you've got an issue with a supplier, if somebody's left the business, but also just day to day really. I was using Mail Manager this morning just to kind of very quickly go and see a couple of some details of a proposal discussion we'd had recently. So I was on the phone to a colleague, and I just wanted to see, well, hang on, what's happened? What's happened in relation to the proposal which we've had, and I can immediately go and see an email my colleague Bradley had sent to a potential client, so which effectively means that I was able to get a status update on something sooner. And these were all the kind of things which were happening to people every day, which were taking up time. So we recognized that and effectively created this solution, which is now available for many other all other businesses. So just before I move on, one question you might have is, well, how does stuff get there? Because we don't want everyone to see everything, which is completely fair. So if I go to my inbox now, I'm sure some of you have got different ways of managing your inbox. For us, everyone created their own filing system, which just meant we had no consistency across the company. So what we've decided to do in Mail Manager is to create a couple of filing buttons here, which learn my behaviors and suggest to me where something should be filed. So when I right-click File, Mail Manager knows that this email should be filed to Pareto, because it picks up that Beth is involved with the Pareto project. It looks at the content of that email, as well as where I filed emails from that person before. So if you're emailing an engineer on a project, another quick win is that it knows which project that engineer is working on, and I can just file it. Now, you may think that, well, that's good, but nobody's going to use it, and people generally don't file their information, and if we rely on them to do something, that's probably just going to get worse. So what we've decided to do is create a prompt in Mail Manager which allows you to basically prompt and predict where information should be filed. Now, what does that mean? That means that you can file without thinking about it and know that it's happening across all of your projects. So every time I action an email, I've got a prompt file, and Mail Manager is going to tell me where it should be filed. So it's filed under the Pareto project, and now everybody else can see this email working on that particular project. If I also then go and respond to an email relating to this Pareto project, I can say, thanks, Lawrence, Beth. I'm going to click send. I'll get a prompt on my outgoing message. Now, the difference here, and this is, I'm really thinking about people in your business who are just, the least likely to file. By replying to this message, Mail Manager files the one I'm responding to. So what that means is just by replying to your emails, your filing's done for you. Briefly, to, I suppose, finish off, just in terms of how you're able to kind of filter your suggestions based on the email. Every email I pick on, I'll have different suggestions based on who I'm corresponding with. So if I go to Nick here, I've got an email from Nick beforehand, and it knows that this is a marketing event, so it suggests to a marketing team. So that's really beneficial for preventing and reducing the amount of thought required to file correspondence. In terms of kind of how Mail Manager works and how it fits in with your business, Mail Manager fits in to how you store your information. So one of the takeaways for today really is to think about, where do you want your information to be stored, because Mail Manager plugs in with that. If you want your information to be stored in SharePoint, we file to there. If you use something like Viewpoint or Procore, we file into there. Most people are using a file server and have a filing structure, and they've got documents and drawings there, but not emails. And this represents an opportunity to get a bridge going between your email and where you want your information to be to be stored. I'm mindful of time, so what I'm going to do is just very briefly put in to the chat. Hi everyone, questions here. I'm very happy to take any questions on the main stage chat, so that's where you should direct any questions to. Just to kind of finish off, really, I'm going to go through some of our clients. So this is really just to show you that we work with some businesses outside of Arup. Obviously, we're a part of Arup, and Arup are obviously using the software across the business, but we work with a number of businesses as well as contractors in the UK as well. So Skanska would be an example. Ground construction. Gensler Architects, who you can see there, Corstorphine and Wright, a multitude of companies really. We've got around 15 of the top 100 architects and 6 of the top 10 engineers are using this in practice through their company. In terms of problems which we solve, I think really one of the outcome, the kind of next step, if this webinar has been helpful to you and is of interest, would be to have more of a discussion, I suppose, and a proper look at Mail Manager in a bit of detail to benchmark it against what you do at the moment. But I think it starts with trying to understand if any of these problems really apply to your business. So if any of these problems do apply, then it's definitely worth a conversation. If you're concerned about the amount of time people spend searching for information, if you're concerned about the risk associated with emails, or the fact that everyone creates their own filing system, then it would definitely be worth a conversation and having a look at a demonstration of Mail Manager. In terms of why people invest in Mail Manager, there's these four, I can't count, 4 key reasons, but I think number 3 and 4 are definitely the most common. So we see examples of Mail Manager delivering 3 hours per person per week, which is really difficult to get through technology. Gensler completed that study, but one of our other clients, Cole Engineering, have as well. And one of our other businesses, Austin Smith Lord, have also done a study on kind of how Mail Manager links in to better quality management from a risk point of view. So yeah, there's some of the reasons businesses invest and implement Mail Manager. But that's it really. Thank you very much everyone for your time. I think we've kept roughly to time, but before we close off, I'd just like to kind of open the floor for any questions. So there's a question. Oh, I can see a couple. So question from Tom Bingley. Nida, I don't know if you want to come back in here in case some come in for yourself. A question from Tom Bingley is, how do you decide what too much information and data looks like? I think that's a really good question. I think kind of deciding what information is deemed important enough to file is a good good thought to have and a good conversation to have. For most firms, it's kind of anything relating to the project, because you kind of do want all of your information stored and captured, but then you need a decent way to go and search for it. I think too much information doesn't look like too much if you've got a proper searching solution. I think if you're looking in your inbox and there's 5,000 emails there, then that does look like too much because it's not designed to have 5,000 emails there. So yeah, I think also with the kind of advent of Teams being used more often, probably hopefully means the quality of our emails is actually slightly better because the informal sort of discussions are happening on Teams. I don't know if you've got a view on that, Nida?
Sorry, can you say it again, because I couldn't hear that.
How do you decide what too much information and data?
Yeah, well, it's, I mean, for us as a construction company, we do face that issue sometimes, but it's probably different from what you face in terms of email management and correspondence management, because we face it, for example, in the BIM world. I do face that issue where I get like information from supply chain, which is like overproduced or which I call overproduction, and I sometimes get like so much information that I can't really manage. Again, there's no, well, it's probably more like individual like decision to decide whether that's an over production or that's too much information. I don't think there's like clear line that we can say that's over or that's less. It's probably like individual decision. Don't know if you agree with me.
Yeah, no, certainly. Thanks for that, Nida. Another question from Tom Bingley has come in. Sounds good for big companies. Does investment versus reward for SME stack up? Yeah, absolutely. I've talked about kind of how some of our obviously larger clients, and I suppose naturally we talk about our larger clients because, you know, just in an event like this, you're more likely to have heard of the larger ones, I suppose. But the majority of businesses using Mail Manager are between kind of 10 and probably 200, 300 staff. There are larger ones like Gensler and Arup using it, but I think a lot of technology for small to medium-sized firms is actually kind of cost prohibitive, too complicated to implement and too difficult to use, whereas Mail Manager is set up and implemented in a day, and we've got businesses who are 4 people using it, because 3, 4, 5 people, because it is that cost effective. So yeah, the majority, I mentioned 30 clients come on board a month, probably 25 of them are SME companies. So yeah, absolutely. Part of the reason for that is that you kind of don't need an IT manager or an IT department to implement and use Mail Manager. So yeah, absolutely. I suppose I am somewhat biased. Another question from Bernard Pierce. Does Mail Manager plug into Aconex? So good question. The answer is no. So it doesn't plug into Aconex. We have had demand from clients to integrate Mail Manager into Viewpoint, which is one system, obviously, ProjectWise, which Arup use across the company, and Procore most recently. Although what's interesting about that is a lot of companies still decide not to file all of their emails in their common data environment. They prefer that to go into their kind of business directory, their SharePoint, their file server, rather than into their common data environment. I think it's probably because systems like Aconex Viewpoint are normally designed for your design deliverables rather than every single piece of correspondence, every single email. But you know, that could obviously be that's an opinion, really. So you're obviously completely free to disagree with that. Another question from Anna Botch, which is sorry if I've pronounced your name incorrectly, Anna. I'm not sure if it was Bock or Botch. Is there any evidence or experience on how the use of a CDE can reduce the volume of emails being generated? For example, emails traditionally being used to transmit attachments, which would normally be stored and shared in a CDE. Yeah, I think there definitely is. I think if you're using a common data environment correctly, your document control transmittals should certainly go through that. I think the bit which is probably wrong is when common data environments were first introduced, everybody, a bit like Teams, everybody thought it's the end of email. We're not going to send any email anymore, whereas we keep sending more and more. So I think a kind of pragmatic view is our key deliverable documents go into the common data environment, but the volume of emails is still going to go up. And the importance of those emails, we're still going to need to file and be able to find them. So yeah, I think the internal messaging features in common data environments often aren't very well used because people just revert back to email. I don't know if you've had any experience with that, Nida.
Well, I would agree with what you've just said. It's within the use of the common data environment. I know you can reuse your emails and your kind of direct communication, but that doesn't replace it at all. You still have like loads of hundreds of emails every day. You still have face-to-face communication. You still have all that happening. I would say common data environment is probably reducing the share of information like drawings or models or whatever. It might reduce that from being in emails, but the conversation overall is still happening on emails.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No, that's thanks for that. There's a question from Mary Kane. Hi, Mary. What is the cost of the initial system? Is there a support system for training, problem solving? Yeah, absolutely. So from a kind of support training point of view, for about kind of a few years, we didn't actually provide any training just because it wasn't really needed, or it wasn't perceived as being needed, but what that kind of meant was we had about 40,000 people in construction using Mail Manager without training. So we do stand by the fact the system's intuitive, but do provide training because we kind of recognise that there's always going to be pockets of a business who need more support than others. So yeah, no, there's an onboarding process which includes training videos as well as interactive personalized training sessions as well. In terms of a cost, it really depends on kind of how many people use it. So what I'd probably recommend is kind of having a more of a look at this through a demonstration, deciding who you want to, who would be relevant to it, and I suppose how many people do you in the business do you really want to make sure they're filing all of their emails, and then from that you can obviously understand the costs involved. So Nida, in terms, there's a question come in here from Tom Bingley, which is, I think, kind of what does CISC use in terms of data and email management, and any sort of biggest challenges and solutions? It's quite a very broad question there, so you're free to kind of answer that however's most appropriate for you.
I'll just answer that briefly. So, I mean, in terms of data exchange, we have a common data environment in place, but again, every conversation kind of people having like discussion that's going through emails, not through CDE, because it's not possible. So I'm not aware of any system like Mail Manager or anything like this in place. But again, it's more like relying on people documenting or filing their information appropriately, which is not under like 100% control as if you've got a system in place. So it's still like based on individual kind of practice or kind of filing emails correctly. Yeah,
spot on. So no, that's right, and I think that's the same for a lot of main contractors. There's a common data environment which has been kind of well implemented. However, in terms of kind of, I suppose, email management, there's a reliance on people to do things, which can sometimes be challenging. I think probably everyone listening to this probably knows, looking around their business or knowing their colleagues, who's most likely to file things and who's least likely to. So anyway, well, I think that's all the questions which have come in. I think there's only actually, sorry, one other question. No, that is all the questions. So thank you, Nida, very much for this. And we try and put these events on so there's a balance between learning more about email and kind of if it's relevant for your company, as well as learning more about construction and I suppose helping your own company kind of thrive through what is undoubtedly an uncertain time. So yeah, thank you very much, Nida. I can see there's my colleagues just put a link in for if anyone on this would be interested in a kind of personalized demonstration to just learn a bit more about Mail Manager and to see if it's even relevant for your company. Then you click the link in the main stage chat, and we'll kind of be in touch to arrange a short session. From that, you'll have the costs and you'll know if it's relevant for you or not. So thank you very much, everyone, for their time. And thank you, Nida. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Nida, and hope you enjoyed that particular webinar. There was some interesting stuff there. I think it's very relevant. It's very current. It's certainly something that we all need to consider. And it was really interesting to hear some of the solutions to everyday problems that I think we're all facing. So hopefully you can see in the chat, Michelle Rodriguez has posted the book a demo there. I'm sure many of you will take it up and follow up on that. So thank you for listening today. Thank you to Nida and to Jacob again. And thank you to Mail Manager. We'll see you on a webinar very soon. Again, I hope. Thanks very much indeed. Cheers.